Good afternoon. My name is James Preston Allen, publisher of Random Links News, and we are here today to talk with Tyler Keeling, who is part of the Starbucks Workers United campaign. And you may or may not have heard that Starbucks, like some of the Amazon workers, are intending to, or in the process of, actually organizing an independent union. So, Tyler, tell us a little bit about what's going on. And you are from the Long Beach area, right?
Yeah, so I live in Long Beach, but I work at the Lakewood location. And us alongside the Long Beach store, we're the first two in Southern California to actually win their union votes back on May 13th of 2022. We weren't the first in California to file. There were actually 3 stores that preceded us. The 2 in Santa Cruz, as well as the one in Chatsworth neighborhood in Los Angeles. However, we were the first 2 in Southern California to win our votes, as well as the 3rd and 4th stores in California to win.
And you've heard that management is in the process of closing down for security reasons. About 200 stores nationwide. Is that something that I heard correctly?
I know of the 16 at least between Oregon, Washington, and California, as well as the one in Ithaca, New York, the College Street location that have closed down. And I know that there is other things happening, such as the, what city is it? It's out in South Carolina. They actually just got closed after marching on their boss and being accused of trying to kidnap and harass their boss. So their store got emergency closed down, and they are currently they filed an unfair labor practice against that store for it being closed over nothing.
Okay. And so you have been in touch with the various locations or outlets that are organizing, correct?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I've been in touch with partners from all across the country, from anywhere from Florida to Seattle to New York. I actually talk to the Buffalo partners very regularly. I was just with, over the weekend, one of the partners from Arizona, Naomi, from the store in Phoenix that unionized. I was with her in Vegas. Mm-hmm. So partners from all across the country are in touch with each other.
And was there some kind of gathering in Las Vegas that was organized for Starbucks workers, or is that?
No. So there was kind of like a blitz, essentially, that was organized by some partners. It was just a couple of us that belonged to the Western States region. And we went out there to try to kind of like speak about the union to other partners that hadn't reached out and started unionizing their location.
Partners, are you talking about labor union partners?
No, so partner is actually the term that Starbucks uses to refer to employees.
Oh, I see.
We are partners to the company.
Oh, isn't that kind of a euphemism?
Yeah. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. They give us a little bit of stock and they think they can call us partners.
But there are certain benefits currently for non-union workers or partners at Starbucks, correct?
So they have offered these new benefit rollout, this new benefits package, as an addition to the regular benefits package that already existed, in an attempt to dissuade partners from unionizing, claiming, in news and press releases and in internal memos that partners that belong to unionized locations weren't going to be able to receive these benefits.
And which are?
Huh?
What are they?
I mean, it's like a pay raise, an expanded sick leave time, mental health days, and just like, I don't know, like they haven't given the fine details of what these things are, but they are holding this like nebulous idea of new benefits over partners' head with a focus on the new pay raise. However, our president of Workers United, Lynn Fox, sent a memo out earlier this month, or very late last month, I can't remember which, basically waiving our right to bargain over these new benefits, thus allowing Starbucks the ability to unilaterally give us these new benefits in unionized shops without forfeiting our right over bargaining in any other instance. Kind of forcing Starbucks' hand here. And they have not admitted that they're going to give us these new benefits yet, and they're kind of beating around the bush and trying to...
So it's sort of like, they're baiting the the union.
It's union busting. It's not
Yeah.
even baiting. It's just straight up union busting.
And so, but let's go back. During the pandemic, which we're not quite out of yet, didn't Starbucks raise the minimum wage for the workers?
There was a temporary, and when I say temporary, I mean maybe 2-month hero pay bonus of, I believe, $3 an hour that they took away mid-May. So it wasn't even really there for that long. That was kind of just a way for them to be like, look, we take care of our workers. But again, they took it away, and it ended up amounting to, a couple hundred a person. Wasn't much.
So what's the starting wage at Starbucks these days?
Now, as of last week, it's $15 an hour across the country, which is, a decent start pay, but not for the labor that is demanded out of us.
Okay. And are there any other benefits that come along with that? I mean, basically what they're taking is the California minimum wage and spreading it across the nation. So if you worked in Kentucky, $15 would probably be a pretty good deal because Kentucky has probably $7.50, $8 an hour minimum wage. But in California,
I mean, yeah, in California, I think our start pay is $16.50, but living in Long Beach, that doesn't amount to much when our rent is $2,400 for a 2-bedroom apartment.
Right.
It's poverty wages that we're fighting for.
Right. Okay, so what are actually the demands that your union, your nascent union, is fighting for? Is it just the union recognition so you can then negotiate for higher wages, or?
I mean, so obviously, there's two major forms of proposals that you make when you go into contract negotiations. You have economic and non-economic, and there is a pretty generalized sense of what we are fighting for, but we're developing that out right now with legal language. So that information is not something I can actually talk about. We don't want to put our demands in the public eye, right? And have Starbucks do what they did with this new benefits package, where they took some of the stuff Buffalo had put out there that they said they were fighting for and then implement them to try to dissuade partners from unionizing, right? So the things that we're fighting for right now, they're not to be talked about publicly.
Okay, but it does include wages and benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. Expanded benefits.
And probably working conditions.
Yeah, 100%. Even just dignity and respect.
Right. Okay. There was something else that came out about Starbucks recently, in that they were going to change their policy on restrooms for the public.
Yeah, but you know what? I think that's very indicative of the state of the company and kind of why unionizing is important. When Starbucks first implemented the open restroom policy, it was in response to two black customers being denied restroom access in Philadelphia. And this was back in, I believe, it was either 2017 or 2018. And it was a very huge nationwide deal. It was talked about everywhere, talked about for months. Starbucks made it a point to try to tackle internal racism through whatever means they decided were fair.
Well, didn't they have a timeout thing that they did?
Yeah, it was really goofy.
Yeah.
Where they closed the stores down for 2 hours for one day, and did this training that kind of didn't amount to much, but it was supposed to be the beginnings of a conversation that they never continued in a meaningful way. But them rolling this back and saying oh, we can't have this anymore, it's not safe. I think implementing and taking things back is very indicative of why we, as the workers of Starbucks, both want to unionize, but why unionizing is important on a bigger scale.
I can't imagine that you could have a coffee shop where you're serving caffeine drinks and not giving people a place where they can go take a piss.
Yeah, well, I mean, Starbucks is it's an anti-homeless measure, is what it is, beyond anything, because it's still going to be accessible to customers. But denying
they're going to give you a key.
They have you been to a Starbucks where they have the code on the door that they only give to customers? I
have to admit that I haven't been to a Starbucks in a very, very long time.
That's fair. It is a little pricey.
No, it's just that I prefer to go to the independent coffee shops.
There's that too.
Yeah. So there's a key code, And so only the people that are deemed patrons can go into.
That seems to be what Starbucks is implying we're going to move towards, yes.
Yeah.
They haven't given an official internal memo on what this is going to look like, but that seems to be the model.
Yeah. Okay. I heard you, at least some of your members have gotten an invitation to the LA Harbor Labor Coalition Labor Day Parade.
Oh, I've heard nothing about that.
Oh, really? It's the largest expression of Labor Day solidarity anywhere, west of the Mississippi. And it happens right on Labor Day in Wilmington.
Okay.
Do you have any Starbucks outlets in Wilmington?
I would have to look. I'm not aware of every Starbucks location, but with us having 1/5 of all Starbucks locations here in California, it's pretty assumable we would have one there.
Okay. Yeah, we in San Pedro we must have 3. I think one for each part of the community. In Long Beach, I'm sure they've got more, right?
Oh yeah, we have a ton in Long Beach.
Yeah.
I mean, just in the South Bay area alone, we have more than 100.
Wow. And what kind of sort of logistics are you confronted with in terms of, if this is sort of your territory, or maybe you're just focusing on Long Beach? How do you reach out to, the various outlets to start the conversation?
Well, so here in California, we have a very unique situation, and that there's no shortage of people reaching out to us. With multiple people reaching out every week. I mean, I've spoken to hundreds of Starbucks workers myself just since I've been involved in the campaign, starting back in March. Mm-hmm. So there's less of a problem of here, going out and reaching out to people to try to get the conversation started. It's more so we're handling on our end, all the people who are reaching out to us and getting the conversation moving with them. And it does take a lot of time and resource, obviously. There's only so many people who are ready to take on that kind of like that birth of work. Right. But there's
and of course, because your labor group is not being sponsored by one of the major unions, your labor organizers aren't getting paid for organizing.
No, there's, we do have our lead organizer, and he is a salaried organizer.
Okay.
With Workers United. And there has been like an internship program for people who have worked closely on the campaign. There's no, like, how do I say, like there are people in this campaign that are, after the fact, after they've unionized their store and they get brought on to this internship, which is a temporary internship,
right?
Have been paid, to work to a degree on the campaign.
Right. Okay. Have any of the major labor unions, I would think that the United Food and Chemical Workers would be very interested in what you guys are doing. In fact, the Starbucks that's inside of the Vons here in San Pedro is, I guess, part of the Vons contract.
Yeah, so that is a store that doesn't belong to Starbucks corporate. It's a franchise store and belongs to Vons. So those are actually Vons employees. There has been, a lot of collective support from different unions. Teamsters, SEIU, UFCW, I'm sure, has reached out in different areas and helped. To the extent, I'm not sure what that looks like, because that's not where I'm involved. I'm involved, on the ground level as a worker in a Starbucks location, helping other workers in Starbucks locations unionize. So to the degree that other unions are involved, I'm actually very unaware of.
Because I would think that right now, particularly, I mean, you just saw Chris Smalls in our lobbies with the Amazon Labor Union, and one would think that, with Amazon in particular, the Teamsters would be all about supporting, organizing, Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
However, it would seem as though there's this trepidation. We've got all of these young people. I mean, you don't look that young to me, but you're not.
I'm 26.
You're not a teenager any longer.
Yeah.
Okay, and I would bet that the majority of the employees of Starbucks are what, younger than 30?
Yeah,
average?
I would say on average younger than 30.
Yeah.
Obviously, the age range at a Starbucks does vary. I've worked with people who are, in their 60s.
Right.
Worked with people as young as, 16 before.
Right.
But it definitely,
Yeah.
the average employee is probably aged somewhere between like 20 to 25.
Right. So, I think there's some kind of there is some trepidation amongst the legacy labor unions that are going, well, I don't know about these, young upstarts. On the other hand, I think there's some cautious skepticism from young organizations such as yours about getting too much in bed with one of the bigger, labor coalitions and whatnot in terms of, becoming a member of the UFCW, for instance, or something like that. Well, what's your take on that?
I don't know. I suppose I haven't really thought about that much, right? Because I have no previous ties to unions in my life. I'm very new to the world of unions, and I have done a lot to learn about kind of labor history, especially in the immediate, and what kind of this movement has become alongside the Amazon labor union movement, because they are such new hot things, right? It's the first time something like this has happened in a long time, and something that's kind of uncontrollable, right? This is, I mean, grassroots is the term that's thrown around, but it is very much I had no ties to partners who organized anywhere in this country, and we organized our store completely we had the help of our organizer, Fernando. He gave us guidance and information, but we didn't have some organizer, some big organizer from some senior union, some legacy union, some anywhere come in and teach us how to do it. We just kind of did it.
So this is a completely do-it-yourself operation.
Yeah, I mean, and it's it's grown in such a unique way. Now, partners are helping partners organize our store, but it's not we have some super seasoned, 60,000 year organizer.
Okay, so when you were going, where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school in a desert town about 2 hours from here.
A desert town,
Apple Valley.
Apple Valley. So, needless to say, no place in your high school did they teach about union organizing.
Nuh-uh.
Okay. Nothing about any of the rich history in California of waterfront strikes and any of that kind of thing, right?
Correct. Yeah, I knew nothing about unions previous.
Okay. Did your parents work in some kind of industry?
No. My father was he kind of just did independent work. For context, I grew up in really deep poverty. Work wasn't really a thing in my family because there was no viable opportunity for a consistent income.
Right.
My dad worked shoeing horses, and my mom, whatever minimum wage job she could get for how long she could get it, she would take it. So there's not some rich deep history connected to labor. It was, I come from a very underserved area, very deep in poverty. I come from a place where you kind of live and die. I got out because I was lucky. I had a couch to crash on after I graduated high school, so I got out of town as fast as I could. But that's not conducive to a successful life in a lot of ways. And I very much am somebody who got lucky to get out and then ended up where I am now, organizing stores and stuff like that.
So do you think that if you get a chance to go back to school, that you would be interested in learning more about labor history and maybe getting a degree in like political science or sociology or, just one of these?
I mean, I don't see why not. Right now, like I did, through Starbucks, I went back to school for software engineering because that's a job where, you can make a decent income. And I'm a Starbucks worker. I'm working for poverty wages, right? Like I don't have some sort of social safety net. My mom's dead, my dad's out of my life, and my grandparents are dead. Like I have no social safety net whatsoever. And so my only option was, I'm working at Starbucks. I've been at Starbucks since 2016. And I went back to school as kind of like my last ditch effort for finding some rope out of poverty, right? And it's been hell. And this is the first time, organizing my store with my coworkers, with my community, with the people I love that I see every day, was my first real other step out of, poverty in any way, because I'm fighting for, a union job now.
Right. All right. So you've been working in the what is it, the Lakewood office?
The Lakewood store?
Lakewood store for, was that?
I've been there for 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah.
But you've been working for Starbucks for
6 years.
6 years. Okay. And so this was sort of a gradual process for you to come to this realization that unionizing the Starbucks was perhaps a better idea than just accepting what they were offering you?
I have always personally, at least since about the age of 16, been really in the talk about social justice and workers' rights and kind of like how capitalism is inefficient and just leads to basically death. Since the time I first got, since about 2013, I would say was when that conversation first started for me. And it gradually developed over a couple of years with me getting involved to learn more about kind of like the trials and tribulations of fighting capitalism and how unions fight capitalism and are, by the workers for the workers in a lot of ways. And that was...
where did that come from? Where did this sense of social justice start with you?
I think this is a very unique thing for people starting in my generation, and that the internet just kind of presented that conversation. That became the hot topic on the internet. And you ended up on one side or the other, which was, pro-social justice or anti-social justice. Whatever that looked like for you as a person engaged on the internet. And that was what kind of led to that conversation for me. It was never some sort of academic thing. It was very much like what people that I surrounded myself talked about. And we just read and researched and talked to each other about. There wasn't an academic setting about it. It was just kind of the topic to be talked about.
And it sort of evolved from your, core values?
There were core values that were developed.
Okay.
But I think coming from, a small desert town where my mom died when I was a teenager because of poverty, was kind of the building blocks for that. Because learning about that stuff, it was very relatable. It was okay, well, obviously this is what caused, my familial conditions, caused us to be trapped in a small desert town where there wasn't a viable economy, where, whatever happened to us, and nobody batted an eye, nobody thought twice about it, nobody thinks about the high desert, nobody thinks about Apple Valley, nobody thinks about Hesperia, nobody thinks about Victorville, right? People that are there are kind of left to die in a lot of ways. And we felt that. Me and my siblings, my mom felt that. Whether we had the language for it or understood it properly at the time, that was our lived experience. And that very much forms every way that you think when you come from that. You don't really get a choice in how you think. You understand what poverty is.
But now that you're in the big city, there's mechanisms in which to address some of that. And that's what the Starbucks union is about for you.
In a lot of ways, yeah, because I am in a bigger city now, but I'm still in poverty, right? I still can barely afford my groceries. I can still barely afford to get by. My partner is disabled and can't work, and we're struggling to get by every day. No matter how many roommates we have, where we live, what happens, right? And this isn't just about me. This is about everyone that I work with, everybody that's going to come into this job after. It's about everyone that works in this company, and anybody who can look at us and be like, oh, we can do this too. We can fight for better working conditions. Starbucks is a company that has over 30 billion in reserves, made 5 billion in excess profits last year. That's money that we generated for this company that we're not seeing in any degree. You know, I work with people from Compton, I work with people from Lakewood, I work with people from Long Beach, I work with people from all over, you know, the South Bay region and surrounding areas, you know, Bellflower, all areas that are historically underserved and very poor cities. And every single one of them, whether they had the language to understand what their lived experience was, felt it too. And when you sit down and you talk about it, you talk about working for a company where, you know, our store makes $60,000 a week. Okay, nobody in my store makes $60,000 a year. If you make a third of that, you're lucky in my store, right? Because that's the reality of being a food service worker in a company that has a massive overhead on everything they sell. When you talk about that, when you link it to your personal experience, you understand that, you know, where you work is successful no matter what they tell you about its success. You know, unless the company is closing, it's making enough money to survive. But we're not making enough money to survive. And everybody in my store understood that, because so many of us do live in underserved areas and work 2-3 jobs, right? Like, there isn't a person in my store who isn't struggling to get by while our store is making enough money to pay CEOs millions of dollars and, you know, managers huge quarterly bonuses, right? But we're out here fighting for our lives. So it's not just about kind of like me in any way. It was never even about me. It was about all of us. It was about a community of people who are struggling together.
Do you realize that how uncommon that sense of being in it together is? I mean, right now, there's a whole side of the national, you know, political argument that is all about, you know, don't take my guns away, you know, don't tell me to wear a mask, don't tell me, you know, it's all about me. Mm-hmm. And here you guys are talking, saying it's us.
Yeah.
I mean, that isn't lost on you.
No, I fully understand that. But I think the thing is a lot of people who are organizing at Starbucks understand that. There's this joke that a bunch of us talk about all the time where it's like, well, if Starbucks didn't want a union, why'd they hire a bunch of gay socialists? But like, it's true, right? Like, you look at all over this country and, you know, there's so many organizers that do belong to, you know, the LGBT community. There's so many of us who understand what community is and how community has been the forefront of us surviving, right? When you come from poverty, you and your neighbors are what help you survive. Right. I knew everyone in my neighborhood because we were all poor and couldn't eat, so we would help each other out as much as we could, right? So this community is the founding idea of this movement for so many people organizing.
So talk to me about what most Starbucks locations are in terms of actually creating public space. I mean, because you know, the history of coffee shops, mm-hmm. In England, and then tea shops in the United States, was the meeting places for political movements originally.
Didn't know that.
Oh, the idea of having a coffee shop in the time of who was the English radical, but it was a hotbed for, you know, talking about things like democracy, mm-hmm. you know, and this became, like, you know, controversial coffee shops. Okay, mm-hmm. All right. So we, unbeknownst to your generation, there is this sort of semi-public space or sphere that is created when people sit down and have coffee, you know, and they have magazines there, and, you know, there's all this stuff, you know. What part of your organizing is going to be focused on maintaining that sort of public space in each community?
I mean, Starbucks has always had a focus in its missions and values of maintaining the third place, which is defined as kind of like the place that isn't work or home, but it's still a place that you belong. So like coffee shops have that history, and I don't know much about that history now, obviously, but at least in the context of Starbucks, like Starbucks has very much made itself a place for people to be. And there's this intention to be a place for people in the community to come and just be, that isn't home or work. And so I feel like that's kind of just like baked into the process, right? Because there's such an idea around community and Starbucks' missions and values, whether or not it's warped by capitalism and the intent to create profit off of it. That is there, and that is something that a lot of people always have admired about the company. But you know, with organizing our stores, there was never this idea around, you know, making sure that, well, I guess there has always been like the idea to kind of like make sure, how do you say, like, you know, your entire community can see and build off of that, right? Like a high tide rises all ships, or whatever that phrase is. But kind of like the fight is about making the work better, and that's going to then, you know, reflect around the community and make work better for everybody, right? Because like they have to keep jobs competitive, realistically. Like Starbucks is gonna have to keep a job competitive. When we're making whatever we make because of a contract versus, you know, someone who isn't working at a contract store makes, they're either gonna have to figure out how to keep those workers blind to what's happening with us, or they're gonna have to create better working conditions for those workers.
Right.
And the intent
So
is
let me interrupt you.
Yeah.
Is there one last thing that you'd like to say, or what's the next community outreach action that your group is going to do for the harbor area?
I mean, like, I don't know, right? We're focused on getting as many workers as we can organized. We're trying to uplift all workers with what we're doing. And we are really just like people. We're not some crazy big secret organization or anything like that.
But do you have a website where people can go if they're interested in joining you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can reach out to any of the union stores, or there's the Starbucks Workers United website that even if you just like type in Starbucks Workers United on Google, it comes up.
Great.
You know, there's so much social media presence on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, from the organization itself, but also just us as workers who also run the socials.
Great.
Like I help with, you know, the Twitter, the Instagram, stuff like that. So.
Great. Well, great. Tyler Keeling, Starbucks Workers United organizer from the Lakewood, Long Beach area. I thank you for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, great.